I'll kick things off. We're here. Nice, bright and early. You really cause a podcaster so many potential hurdles and issues because there's so many dimensions to your backstory. And it's a tricky one to try and think where to start. Usually the best place starts at the beginning. And I'm probably going to take a piece of advice from your own show, right? So maybe we start off with you giving a backstory for yourself and kind of capsulate from there.
There's a challenge. So I guess it all starts off with me being East London lad, come through school, did okay at school, was one of the guys that was perhaps in with the lads, but at the same time, sort of kept a balance with the nerds, if that's the right word. And I got through okay, was never an academic, managed to sort of find my way, but left school at 16, eager to leave and get out and do stuff. My dad was a fridge engineer. When I was younger, he moved on to do other stuff, electronics and whatnot. But the one thing he said to me that stuck in my head was he said, a good fridge engineer will never be out of work. And that sort of stuck with me. And when we went to the careers office in your school and they say, okay, let's have a chat, and you've got people who want to be secretaries, nurses, plumbers, bricklayers, and so on. I said to the careers office, I want to be a fridge engineer. And he went, what's that? So it was just people just didn't understand what refrigeration was. So that made me even more determined. So anyway, I went to refrigeration, worked really, really hard. And I guess the first time I experienced my desire to achieve stuff was I was 16 years old. I was an apprentice. I was making the tea. I was lagging pipes. I was cocky as hell, only because I felt comfortable around the guys I was working with. And one day I was sitting in the canteens. We used to get there at 7, have breakfast at 7:30 to 8:30, and then work all day without stopping. We was installing refrigeration in Sainsbury's. And one day I was in this canteen, and I don't want to come over me. I think they was all having a go at me about something. And I just said, by the time I'm 19, I'll be a supervisor. And they all laughed and clipped me around and said, shut up. We've been here 20 years. We ain't made supervisor. And the thing about supervising them days, we all drove vans, but a supervisor got in his state car and wore a suit and all this sort of stuff. And this company was, donkeys, hundreds of years old, and family business. And it was, for those that may have known, it's called Carter Refrigeration, Carter Retail. Anyway, at that point, I'd said it out loud, and because I'd said it out loud, I had to do everything I could to make it happen. And I just worked like a Trojan, and I just kept going and going. I was also in college at Wilston College, learning the theory of refrigeration as well as working. It was a day release. And then, and I'll fast forward. I was 19 on the 13th of February. On the 20th of February, we had a meeting in Hanwell, which is where the office was. And we're in this meeting. We always had a meeting in a pub once every 2 or 3 months. And the service manager stood up, and there was about 30 of us, 35 of us in this sort of room in this pub. And he stood up and said, we've got an announcement to make. We've got a promotion that we're putting out. And there's all these guys going, really? And I'm sitting there going, what's all that? And he said, we're promoting someone to a supervisor. And he chucked a set of car keys at me. And I caught these car keys and went, what? And that was it. I'd become a supervisor. So, of course, I'm pleased as punch, but I got ostracised by everybody. How dare you be a supervisor? Yeah, and all this. Anyway, so although it was good, it was bad because then I had to work 10 times harder to get people back on side again. So that was a story of me first experiencing, if you say it out loud, you stand a better chance of succeeding because now you've created accountability. And anyway, I then went on to enjoy what I did. I was very, very well trained, so I was lucky. Just before, when I finished my training, that's almost when training fell off a cliff with businesses. They stopped training because they're trying to save money. Of course, that bit us in the arse 20 years later when we've got so much lack of training going on. But anyway, I then, because in refrigeration you work stupid, I was working 110 hours a week. It was just non-stop, but I loved it. For me, it wasn't work. It wasn't punishment. I loved every minute of it. I couldn't get enough of it. Fixing stuff and making things work just really, really got me energized. And then, but of course, working those hours, I'd got married at 19. Those hours don't really play a good role in a marriage. So at 22, I ended up getting divorced. And I met a new lady a year later, and she said to me, you can stop that lark. So I then got a job locally with another big fridge company at the time called Hussman, who were in Ipswich, and I was living in Colchester at the time. I moved from East London down to Colchester. And and I was only doing 55, 60 hours a week. Of course, I was feeling the pain because I wasn't earning anywhere near the money, but I just went, no, it's time for a life change. So I started spending a bit more time on weekends and stuff. And then eventually, she then said to me, I don't like this 55, 60 hour lark either. I want you to go and get a 40-hour job.
All right.
So she said, so I found this job for you. It's a manager's job in a air conditioning company. And I said, I'm not a manager. I know nothing about being a manager. I didn't even know how to wear a suit. And anyway, I applied for the job under pressure from her. Got the interview, sat down, lied through my teeth about every question. Can you design air conditioning? Can you apply air conditioning? Do you know how to do volumetrics on ductwork and extracts? I said, yeah. Of course I can. Don't ask silly questions. Do all that at college. Of course, I had no idea. And anyway, I got the job. And suddenly I'm now in a fancy Vauxhall Cavalier, black with cream trim, and car phone, which was ridiculous. The car phone had just come out. And I'm in a suit. And I'm thinking, what on earth am I going to do now? But again, I had to take a pay cut because that was a salaried job. So I was earning 5 years earlier on the tools. I was earning at the time 25 grand a year, which was a lot of money compared to. And I'd just taken this job at 16,000 a year, no matter what hours I worked. So then I got exposed to what it was like in the office. So we were running it was an air conditioning business. They'd employed me to grow it from what was 200 grand a year in air conditioning. They also did ventilation and stuff, which I wasn't part of. And they brought me in just to build the air conditioning business, and their target was to get it to £1 million. So I then had to engage with subcontractors I'd never done before. So it's a whole new look. I had to learn fast. And it also brought out that saying that I love very much, entrepreneurs bite off more than they can chew and learn very quickly how to chew it. So I had to do a lot of learning very, very quickly. And in those days, we had a thing called a T-card system, which was a bit of metal on the wall with a load of T-cards, and you'd write jobs down that were coming in, you put it in the T-card, and if you give it to an engineer, you move it to the next slot. And I was looking at this stuff saying, are we really still using bits of paper? What is going on? So I went and bought an Amstrad 1640 computer out of my lack of money, which basically meant I went a month behind in arrears on my mortgage because I needed to find a better way. My wife at the time said to me, why haven't we paid the mortgage? I said, don't worry, I'll fix it. And I started playing about this computer to see, I wonder if I can get a computer to do this. Anyway, cut long story short, I found a bit of software, modified it, played about a bit, and I got this all working, spent every evening, every weekend for about 9 months, creating this environment where I could do everything automatically, from assigning engineers to assigning subcontractors, getting their invoices, sending invoices out, blah, blah, blah. And I got it all working. And it made a hell of a difference. So I took it into the business, the owners of this particular business I was working for, and I said, and by the way, at that point, the end of year figures had shown we'd hit £1.1 million in sales on air conditioning. So I nailed it. So I then walked in and said, look, I've got something I want to show you. And I pulled in this computer and said, look, I've built all this in my own time. I've done all this stuff. And it just works like a dream. And they went, wow, that's incredible. You did all that? I said, yeah, that's brilliant. I said, but there is one thing I'd like in return. They said, what's that? I said, well, this computer cost me 900 quid, which has meant I've been a month in arrears of my mortgage for 9 months. And, if you could give me the 900 quid for the computer and we can leave it here and it can run the whole operation, that'd be great. They said, no, not interested. I said, pardon? What do you mean not interested? They said, no, we told you to get to £1 million quid. We got £1 million quid. We're not bothered about going any further. And, it's great that you've done all that stuff, but no, we're not. We didn't ask you to do that. So I said, okay. So I didn't get into any spat over it. So I said, no problem. So I took the computer home, put it back out indoors, and then that was the moment I said, I'm going to go and do this myself. So about a week later, they said, how are you getting on with the computer, Jeff? I said, well, I'm not getting on with it at all. I said, my house switched off. Well, after all that work you put into it, why wouldn't you use it? I said, because you wouldn't pay me 900 quid. Why would I use it? And then I then spent the next 4 months building what I was going to do myself. And then I went out and started a business. And I was now going to be an air conditioning installation company. And the clients I'd built up with that particular company, which 5 years later went bust anyway, I'd approached those clients and said, look, I'm starting a business. Would you support me? And they said, yeah, absolutely. And then that was it. So I started... I had a forecast of 110,000 for the first year, which was obviously just doing a few jobs and bits and pieces to paid me a 12 grand salary at the time. And it was all just going to be 100 mile an hour and 24 hours a day, et cetera. But on our first year, we'd done just shy of $1 million. So, and that was the start of the first business.
Yeah. And right, so a couple of things to unpack there. Going back to the point of you being promoted to supervisor, because that resonated so much with me in a previous journey, right? Where I went from one role into another. I love the idea of it. Then when I went into it, I was thinking, okay, now how do I figure this part out? How do you battle with the imposter syndrome that can come through, right? I read on your website, and it's a great saying, and I totally agree with it. Imposter syndrome effectively is a gift to those people that will bite off more than they can chew and embrace their entrepreneurship. But how do you cope with imposter syndrome back then? I guess you don't probably get it as much these days.
It's a great question, because it's a question that sometimes none of us really know the answer to. But all I know is that, and I talk about it now because I've got clarity on why I did what I did back then. But, if you don't live in imposter syndrome, if you sit in your comfort zone, you might as well just go and jump off a bridge. There is no point in living. We are here as a species to evolve and grow. And you only evolve and grow when you try new things and you come out of your comfort zone. And I remember when I got that promotion as supervisor, and I got ostracised straight away. Literally, people, apart from one or two people, everyone was just slagging me off all over the place, behind me, back, everywhere. And I had two choices. I was get the ump about it and go punch him in the face, or do I try what was then seen the impossible and get them on side? So my target then, my job was, I'm going to get these guys on side. Somehow I'm going to get these guys on side. And there was there was a number of jobs, but there's one particular job I'll never forget. I get a call at 11 o'clock at night from my service manager, and it was a Sainsbury's in Tunbridge, and a compressor had gone down on there was 4 packs. There's 2 low temperature, 2 high. These are massive machines, probably twice the size of this room. And they were running all the freezer aisles, or all the dairy counters or whatever. And this was a low temperature one, which was all the frozen food. If you lose frozen food, there's a massive stock loss, et cetera, et cetera. And there was always a spare compressor on site. But these compressors weighed 1.5 ton. And they were 6-cylinder. And I got a phone call, and the guy that was on standby at that time, who will remain nameless, he got the call and he said that I can't change it. We need 2 people. So I phoned everyone around. No one's available. I can't get hold of anyone. And the people I can get hold of have had a drink. So it was a Friday night. So we're not going to be able to do it. So my service manager, Russ Nicholson, his name was, bless him, he's passed away now. But he phoned me up and said, right, Jeff, here's your chance to prove yourself. So I said, well, I thought I already had proved myself. I got in his state car. But anyway, we had a bit of banter over that. He said, compressor's gone down at Tunbridge. It's 11 o'clock at night. The call came in 2 hours ago. We can't get it covered. This guy won't do it. What do you reckon? So I said, well, I'm on my own. He said, yeah, I know. Can you demonstrate that you can do it on your own? So I said, yeah, I'll give it a go. Anyway, so I get out there at 12:30 at night. Walked in, the manager went, how are you going to do this? Because this thing is massive, right? But anyway, although there was a spare compressor, there was a little mini crane, like a trolley jack, for want of a better description. And as long as you took your time and you thought about it, you could do it on your own. So anyway, 3 o'clock in the morning, I changed the compressor, purged it all out, connected all the valves up, connected all the cabling up, switched her on, and at 2:30, all the cabinets were back down at temperature again, job done. And then I phoned my service manager at the time, who was phoning me every hour to see if I killed myself or not, and said, yeah, it's all done, it's all running, and just doing the service sheets now. And he went, well done, son. And that was it. And I went to bed, and he went to bed. What I didn't realise until later was how he, who managed all of the guys, said, Jeff has just done something that none of you have ever done or been prepared to do. And the only difference between Jeff and you was not because he's cleverer, he was just more determined. His tenacity is off the scale. And there is nothing he can't or won't do. And the only difference is attitude. It's not skill, it's not intelligence, it's just attitude. At which point, a few of them then spoke to me later and said, how did you do that? So they now became curious. And I said, it's really easy. You just do this. And they went, we never even thought about that, blah, 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 blah. And that was the start of the journey of trying to command respect as opposed to demand it. And then after about 6 months, 7 months, people were coming to me saying, can you help us with this? Can you tell us about this? And I was just now helping people, which was what the job of a supervisor was. And then, I eventually got everybody on side. But the idea was not to fight back harder. It was, how do I get them on side? And that was the journey.
So when you took that plunge, decided to go, right, I'm going to go on my own and go down that path. I mean, so many people think about that, dream about potentially going on their own. But the reality is it's complete different wilderness, right? You've got to put in so many hours, put so much faith and trust into people around you, the teams, the processes, and everything that comes with that. There must have been some trials, tribulations, and bumps along the way.
Where'd you start? Of course there was. I mean, it all started off exciting because the most exciting part is when you cut your first invoice and get your first payment. Yeah. And you think, well, we're now a business. But I mean, it was good fun. We were winning work. It's at good margins. Yes, working all the hours. But that for me wasn't about work. It was what I loved. So it wasn't, I never classed it as work. But then you do get, the trials and tribulations because you've put everything on it. You've put your house on charge with the bank. There's times where you'll go without money or a salary because it just isn't, we ain't collected the money yet, or whatever the case may be. And you've got a young family. I mean, I had 2 kids at that point. So, but then I was working for a company called E&I Coward, who were quite a large business, and they were winning mechanical work. They was a huge mechanical contractor, so they would go and tender and work. So the first job we got was Peabody Trust, which is a housing association in Peabody Road in London. Lovely 5-story building. They just acquired it, and E&I Coward had won the mechanical contract to do all the mechanical ducting, electrics, etc., etc. And they wanted air conditioning throughout the thing, so they come to us and said, look, can you tender? We tendered amongst everybody. Anyway, we won the tender. And then, so I've delivered all this diking equipment to site, and we start doing it all. And then I go and do my first application, because you do monthly applications for payment. And the first application was about 70, 80 grand. And this was a 150 grand job. So it's a big job. In fact, it was the biggest we've done thus far. And now I was struggling to get hold of them, struggling to get any money out of them. And then eventually I got hold of them. They said, no, you haven't given us your collateral warranty yet. I said, what the freaking hell is collateral warranty? So but I didn't want to say that and look ignorant. So I went to my insurance company and said, I'll need a collateral warranty. I went, yeah, no problem at all. Leave it with me for 10 minutes. Anyway, came back an hour later. I said, yeah, I've sorted you out some cover. It's 2.5 grand. That'll give you a collateral warranty. So I said, okay, weighed out the 2.5 grand premium. Sent over the collateral warranty, and they went, that's not collateral warranty, that's professional indemnity. I went, what's professional indemnity? So fast forward to all this, what it meant was the company that I was using at the time, which was not a one-man band broker, but a very small broker, also had no idea what collateral warranty was, and they just made an assumption that we meant professional indemnity. Right. So he went and committed me to professional indemnity, which we didn't need because the kit was diking, we weren't designing anything. And as a result, they wouldn't pay me. And then I then had to go searching for someone that knew what a collateral warranty was. So I then got hold of this broker who came and saw me straight away and said, yep, no, collateral warranty is far more severe than a professional indemnity. Collateral warranty basically means that no matter how many times that building changes hands, your installation is warranted for 12, 15, 20 years. I went, geez, and they said the trouble is now asking for a collateral warranty after the fact, any insurance company's going to smell a rat. So I went, oh great. Anyway, in the end, I was in Culture Hospital, and my 3rd child was being born, and I was literally holding my partner's hand while she was in labour. This nurse ran in with one of those wheeling telephones and said, Mr. June, I've got an urgent call for you. So I took the phone off her while I'm having my hand squeezed because she's in pain. And there was one of my colleagues that worked with me. He said, Jeff, I think E&I Coward about to go bust. I went, you're kidding me. I went, why is she? So I then walked up the corner of the room and started making phone calls and all sorts of shit, called a lawyer and said, what do we do? And so on and so on. Anyway, Hayley was born, and then Michelle was settled. I thought, right, I've got to go and sort this out, because if I lose that 80 grand, that's it, we're done. House is gone, everything's gone. And so I spoke to this lawyer who said, you've got 3 choices. You can do a county court summons, that'll take a year, and they'll probably go bust in the meantime. You can do a high court writ, but that's going to cost you a lot of money, and they can defend it. Or you can do a winding up petition. We're going to wind them up. So he said that gives them 21 days. So whatever happens, you're going to get an outcome in 21 days. So I said, go for the wind up, go for the stat demand. So we did. I then got summoned up to their head office is in Ipswich, and the chairman was sitting there, and all this beautiful mahogany desks and mahogany walls and God knows what. And his wife's sitting on the couch with his 2 kids running around with toys. And he sat me down and said, "I think you've behaved in very bad taste." I said, "I beg your pardon." He said, "Well, this winding up petition, this statute demand, I demand that you withdraw it." I said, "I'm not withdrawing nothing until you pay me my money." He said, "It's in disgusting behaviour. It's in very bad." I said, "Hang on a minute, your behaviour's disgusting." So we had this little bit of spat to and fro. And he obviously already knew the severity of a stat demand, because it just means you call in the debt, it gets advertised, and everyone comes after you for the money, so you're knackered. He already knew what he was going to do, so he pushed across an envelope, and in it was an 80 grand cheque. And so he said, "So will you now withdraw the stat demand?" I said, "Yes, when this is cleared." So I went straight to the bank, which was 3 doors up, put it in, done what you do, a special clearance, which doesn't pay you the money the same day, but it confirms that the money's available. Got the 80 grand. 7 days later, they went bust. That's how close it was.
Wow.
So, so there's lots and lots of ups and downs.
Yeah.
And they were times when I'm sitting there thinking, the birth of my 3rd child was almost entirely ruined because of behaviour of the construction industry and behaviour of people in the construction industry. And it was rife in them days.
Yeah.
And all those lessons were all the lessons that I'd learned, where when I started my current business, that was it. How do I address all these things that are causing so much pain and so much bad behaviour? And it all came from those experiences.
Yeah, for sure. Talk to me about Clacton FD.
So I built my business in air conditioning, and I started at 0, and I told you the forecast was 110,000. We ended up doing just shy of 1 million, or just over 1 million on the first year. Anyway, I got it up to about 5 million, and it didn't matter what I did, I couldn't get it to go past 5 million. I tried employing, one of our clients at the time was NatWest Bank, and one of their head of estates, who I had a lot of respect for, because he was the one placing all the business, very smart guy, very technically competent, He decided he'd had enough working at the bank for 20 odd years. So I thought, he's a smart guy. He knows all these contracts. I said, "I'm going to employ you." He was far better than I was. So I paid him more money than I paid me, came in and, started doing stuff. But after 2 years, delivered the square root of 0. Because it's amazing when you take someone out, when they're in that environment, they're effective because they've got all this other stuff going on around them. When they come out on their own, it's almost like they can't swim. And, so anyhow, I did that 2 or 3 times, brought in a CFO that was shit on finance, to find that he just didn't have a clue about real life. He just knew numbers. So even despite trying to employ people far better than I was, it weren't working. So I was frustrated. I actually was beat. I didn't know. And I was bored. I started to get bored. And I'd cut the people working for me that loved working and loved doing the job and loved working with the business. And I saw this opportunity to buy a non-league football club. And one thing I'd learned was I'd sponsored the local village club. I got approached by some friends in the village in the pub and said, "Jeff, why don't you sponsor this? It's like 300 quid for the shirts or whatever." So I did. But then I started getting involved, and I started going and watching the games and started sort of pumping the guys up. And then I thought, "I'm going to buy you some tracksuits." And then they grew another 3 foot and they started winning games. And then I was heavily into photography. I've always been into photography. So I go out there with all my camera again, I'm taking all these photographs, and suddenly, them scoring goals, heading balls, referee being knocked over, was all hitting the back pages of the local press. Of course, that's making them another 3 foot taller, because they're seeing themselves in the paper every week. And I just saw the ability to inspire people, motivate people. So anyway, Clacton approached me, who was the team that everyone aspired to play for if you was in non-league, and said, will you come and see us, which I did. And they said, "Will you sponsor us?" And I said, "No, you're a group of 20, 30 odd people. You're lovely people, but you're builders, you're plumbers, you're decorators. You're not entrepreneurs. And giving you a load of money is just you're going to do the same things you've always done." I said, "The only way I'm interested is if I buy the club." And that was the start of the debate. So I bought the club for square root of nothing, because it was heavily in debt. And then the first thing I'd done was realise that I've got a business here that was turning over 600-700 grand a year, because it had a bar and all that sort of stuff. But it didn't employ anybody. Everyone was volunteers. So I went, imagine that, having a business that's earning money where all of your staff are volunteers. Wonderful. So the model was brilliant. So I then immediately just leveraged all my supply, all the people I knew, my suppliers, my business, said, I need you to advertise on the ground if you want to continue working with me. So I leveraged it to the extent I could. And then I raised about 10 grand in advertising revenue with all balls around the ground, with all suppliers supporting and stuff like that. And then I realised that you couldn't take beer out onto the pitch at non-league under FA rules. So you only had that window of opportunity before a game where people come and spend money on beer, and then 15, 20 minutes at half time where people spend money on beer. So I've got this very restricted revenue stream. So I then put, my old man was into CCTV and stuff, so I put these fantastic mobile cameras around the pitch and a big 15-foot screen in the clubhouse. Went to the local camera club, got more volunteers because they want to use this fantastic technology. So they used to come down and film the game. So people then stayed in the club and watched it on the screen, even though it was outside. So now I've created a 4-hour window of revenue.
What a master stroke.
And just little things like that. It was all about, doing that. And then little things like we go to a big game and I would hire the Colchester United coach, which is all leather and tables and shit. And it's like they'd scored 2 goals as they pulled in the car park because the opposing team was shitting themselves like they're doing a leather coach and all this shit. So anyway, cut long story short, Clacton had won nothing for 50 years. I got involved in 97. We won the league 3 years on the trot. We won the East Anglian Cup, which we hadn't won since 1947. We reached the third round proper of the FA Cup. And in the FA Cup, you're talking about 150 grand prize money, right? So each game. And if you got so it was 50 grand, but if you got at least 10 minutes TV coverage, it was another 100 grand. And then the FA Vars, we got to the quarterfinals twice. We had Richie Powell, who's an ex-Arsenal player, became the manager. He brought in a guy called Amaro Simba, who's an ex-French international, used to play with Eric Cantona. And we was just having the time of our lives. And it just consumed me. I was at the club 40 hours a week, which meant I took my eye off the business, although someone had said, let me run it, Jeff, which I did. Anyway, it got into trouble and then I had to go back and try and resolve the issues with the business. But the reason I got involved with the club was because I was bored. That completely energised me and I learnt another massive lesson. I found I had a skill that I didn't know I had to just motivate the same players to achieve results they'd never achieved before. And it was just, how do you get people pumped? And that was so it's a valuable lesson, but it came at a cost.
And that cost was?
Losing everything.
So when you lost everything and you've had all this mighty success in the sports industry now, but financially, you turn around and you look at the business that you had built, you put your efforts into, your life and soul into it. How'd you pick yourself back up from that to then go, right, let's go again?
I think if you are very thick-skinned and very stupid, you can wake up the next morning and go, right, let's go again, because you don't really understand what's happened. With me, I had a slightly bigger challenge in as much as I've been brought up all my life by my parents to take responsibility. And we all at some point try to blame the world or try to blame other people. And that upbringing made me really look in the mirror. And you've got to bear in mind at that point, because of the success of the football club, I was known in the town by just about everybody for a number of reasons. And I had to walk down Clacton High Street to job seekers to claim my allowance. First time I'd ever been on the dole. And people are saying, all right, Jeff, where are you going? All right. And I go, oh, no, we're just going for a walk. And of course, they're watching me going to job seekers. And I'm thinking, this is killing me. And that's pride, obviously. But nevertheless, it was tough. And then I was at home. I didn't even have a car. I was renting a small bungalow on job seekers. And I've got, the wife at the time or the partner at the time saying, what we're going to do. And then one particular day, she said, look, we've got no food in. Can you just nip out and get some bread and some beans so I can give the kids beans and cheese on toast? So I said, yeah, no problem. And at that point, my dad had lent me a car he had spare, so I was using that, and a beat-up old Cavalier. So I shoot into Clacton town, go to the ATM, put my card in, try to draw a tenner, it says insufficient funds. So I pushed the balance button, it says £7.60. I couldn't even get the £7.60 out because the minimum would dispense was £10. So I had to go home without bread and without beans. And that's one of the things that's kept me grounded ever since. So realising that low then put me into a bad place where I just went hiding for 2, 3, 4 months. And I wasn't feeling sorry for myself, but was making myself suffer the pain that I'd actually created. And then one day, and it wasn't my partner saying, sort yourself out, Jeff, but one day I just went, I've got a lot. I thought when you start a business and you're successful in that business, you become an IT specialist, you become a lawyer, you become an accountant, you become a HR specialist. You have to learn all these things as part of running a business, right? And if you're successful, you're given this false sense of security that you know a lot. And one of the things I'd realised that despite that success, it was more luck than judgment, and I knew absolutely the square root of zero. I had a lot of learning to do. So I then woke up one day and said, right, I'm going back to work, which is, I've got to go back to work for a couple of reasons. One, I've got to earn some money to feed the family, but more importantly, I've got to learn a lot of lessons. And that was the reason that I went back to work, to learn. Whereas before, I didn't think anyone could teach me anything because I'm successful. Why do I need to learn anything? And that was the stupidity. And also, when I started the first business, I started a business to get rich. Why we all do it. Why most young entrepreneurs do it. I want more than the salary. I want a nice big car, a nice big boat, a nice big house. I want to be financially free. We do it to get rich. And 90% of the companies in that environment do not succeed. And during my journey and all the lessons, I realised that, if I'm going to succeed, I need to start a business that's going to solve somebody else's problem. And that's a business with purpose. And 90% of businesses that have a genuine purpose succeed. And but they were the lessons it took me. So I went back to work, not for 6 weeks, 6 months. I went back to work for probably just shy of 8 years to learn those lessons before I felt I was ready to start another business.
That's a full-on humbling experience to do that, right? I think one of the things that I've been really lucky up until now in my career, I must admit, I've worked for some real standout entrepreneurs, small business owners, business-minded individuals. I've also had the experience of working in a more corporate setting where it just becomes more about facts and numbers, and everyone's known by a number, and it's all revenue, profit, EBITDA, and all the rest of it that kind of comes into it. But the one humbling fact I find across the board with successful entrepreneurs and business owners alike is be, on occasion, the dumbest in the room. Look to try and learn something new out of it. And exactly what you just learnt on a moment ago, in a corner of any room, especially when you're managing, in my world now, multiple teams at any one time and you're looking at the commercial elements of a business, there's a box in the corner of the room, and at any one time you've got to pick up multiple hats and you've got to make them fit at different times to be able to get the best out of people along the way. And we're going to come on in a minute to the businesses and where you are now within your life, but I would imagine that leaning into getting the best out of people, if you've been able to pull that from the sporting industry, that's something you're now just rinse and repeat, you're copying and pasting throughout every single business that you're working into now. Is that a fair assumption?
It is. I think the biggest lesson I learned, which is what makes me as happy as I am today, is realising that there's no such thing as a stupid person. There are people that are very ego-driven, but you become your environment. If you're in a hostile environment, you become hostile. If you're in a loving environment, you become loving. And therefore, the key to success of any organisation, family, business is what is the environment in which you are operating. And if you can set the environment to be the right environment, people will thrive. That's the objective. You've got to create a safe environment. And you talk about being the smartest person in the room. If ever you meet anyone that thinks they're the smartest person in the room, they will be toxic. It's as simple as that. And you've got to realise that what people need to learn, managers becoming, trying to become leaders trying to become better leaders, is that you have to be the last person to speak. You need to hear what everyone else has got to say first. If you want to speak first, why have you got 10 other people in the room? It should just be you talking in the mirror. So when you can learn to truly do that and do it because you do care about other people's views, then suddenly you're on the journey to becoming a great leader. And I do a lot of keynotes all over Europe, and one of the things that people say to me is, look, Jeff, we're on this leadership journey. How do we measure how we're doing in that growth as a leader? How do we know if we're getting better, staying the same, getting worse? And I say it's really simple. I'm going to ask you a question. How many decisions have you made this week? And they'll say 20. Some will say 100. When you've not made a single decision, you are on the journey to becoming a great leader. You let your team make decisions. Your job is to ask great questions to help them find the right answers, but you never give them the answer. Even if you know it, 9 times out of 10, you don't even know the answer, but let them find their way. Never make a decision. And in my life today, I would say I'll probably make 3 decisions a year.
And what would you say for people that are coming through? They're on that leadership journey, right? In either for themselves or they're working on behalf of a company, and they're just purely thinking, well, how could I get to a point of entrusting more people? Because I totally buy in 100% to the ethos and the grounding of what you just mentioned there. But even up to my point in my career, the amount of managers that you come into that their mindset is, I'll walk into the room, I'll fix the problems, boom, 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 boom. And it takes very different type of person to try and sit back and go, let me ask who, what, where, when, why, how, to try and extrapolate that information out of people. How do you go through that process when you're hiring within your businesses now to try and find those types of candidates? Is there anything in particular you're looking for at that point, or?
It all depends. It all comes back to the same thing. The people that you are trying to bring into your business, you need to establish very quickly what environments have they been in for the previous 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because then you know how big a job you've got. But we don't do interviews anymore. I stopped doing interviews 8 years ago because they're not fit for purpose. Anyone goes for an interview or conducts an interview, just flick a coin. That's all it is, right? If you want to truly look at employing the right people and getting it right and retaining the right people, you have to establish what they're like. And I use a phrase which is not particularly pleasant to a lot of people, but I say, but before I employ somebody, I need to sleep with them. Now, what I mean by that is I want to see when they're happy, when they're sad, when they're angry, when they're drunk. I need to see them in all these environments to truly understand the person. And what we do now is we do assessments. So whether you're coming for a board director role or a help desk role or an apprentice, you come to spend 2 days with us. And in that 2 days, it's a very structured period of time where we put loads of people together. It'll be half a dozen of our existing team. It'll be half a dozen people that are applying for roles in the business. And we do things like build rockets out of spaghetti, right? And it's a very, very structured process. And what we're trying to establish is a couple of things. What are you like in all these environments? Do you surface as the arrogant leader that knows everything? Do you surface as a person that's encouraging other people and looking after other people before you're looking after yourself? And at the same time, it gives them the opportunity to see what we're really like. So, and of course, they get to speak to the existing team members and say, look, we've heard all this stuff about cloud. It's, we keep it in this fantastic business. What's it really like? And they get to hear the truth as well. And, good, bad, or ugly. So it's really transparent and honest. And the reason that that's so powerful is we then, whoever's the hiring manager who might be as part of that 2-day assessment, and they would normally make the decision like you would in an interview, they can only see the world through their eyes. What they can now do is at the end of the assessment, they go to the 6 or 7 existing team members and say, what do you think? And 3 of them might say, wrong, and you should have heard what they said in the canteen, right? Or they'll go, sharp as nails. They really care. The empathy was off the scale. And suddenly you've got 6 people commanding a decision rather than 1. And since we've done that, we have got a 98% success rate of retaining the people we hire. And attrition has almost stopped because it's about brutal, honest, and psychologically safe in every regard. And then what then happens is when you look at the way in which people and humans behave, what a lot of people don't realise unless you've done the studying or done a lot of reading, is that every human being's decision-making has got nothing to do with logic, right? You've got your cortex, which says 2 + 2 is 4, and it's linked to language. But if you don't feel right, which you can't explain, if it doesn't feel right, you don't do it. So your emotion makes all the decision. So if you can imagine, after that 2-day assessment, before we've even talked about salary, packages, all that nonsense, they've already decided they want to work for the business before we've even got to having that conversation, because they've experienced the people, the laugh, the fun, the humour, the comfortableness, the safety, the empathy, the fact that they see that the people are the most important part of the business. So before we've even got to the chat, they've already decided they want to work for us, and it becomes a lot easier. The conversation becomes a lot easier, and they don't start negotiating salaries and stuff. They've already decided they want to work for you. And that is how we get the right people in the business, because we put them across this whole cross-sectional set of scenarios, even down to little things like we say, right, we're all going to a desert island. What 3 things would you take? We do all this sort of stuff because it really gets under the skin of what people are really, really like.
Brings that character.
Absolutely. And you get to see the real person, which you can't see in an hour or 2 hour interview.
Yeah, of course. And that I think the conventional way of doing interviews for me has always been a massive bugbear. And I must admit, I think probably about 5 years ago, I stopped the idea of people showing me CVs. And for a lot of people, that is a bit of a, well, you need that structure, you need that guidance. But 90% of the CVs that ever come across your desk, the person's been a brain neurological surgeon at some point. They've worked for NASA on another occasion. They've got A stars across the board, and it all reads perfectly. So I usually open up most interviews with, I'm going to put that over the side. I love CVs, but I much prefer people. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And I must admit, on the journey of doing that, it's almost refreshing to see their guard drop instantly to go, okay, this is a bit different. What were you going for here? And they're just having that open, honest conversation and chat. And a big thing for us actually is 360-degree feedback. So taking people through the whole 9 yards of the business, and we literally let people waddle off, sit down in different departments of the business and say, go and spend time with them, talk to them. I'm not going to sit there over your shoulder. You go and get familiar with the people you're sat amongst. And it allows 2 things, exactly what you just said there. It allows people within the business to give some open, honest feedback about what that person was like, that gut feeling instinctively about them. And similarly, the potential candidate gets the opportunity to say, okay, maybe I'm not too fond of that or whatever. And touch wood today, we've not had anyone do the wrong thing, right? And exactly what you were saying there, the attrition rate within our organisation has been spot on. And I think most of that comes through the point of having trust in the people, putting them in a safe, happy working environment and giving them the tools they need to succeed and to thrive there afterwards, right? Talk to me about FM. Talk to me about Cloud FM in particular and the decision to kind of go into that, because I know, again, from listening to all of your podcast episodes, no doubt, and your book, it wasn't something that just kind of came out of the blue, as it were. It was methodical in its approach leading up to it, and all things happen for a reason, right?
Yeah, so I went back to work, as I said, for 8 years to learn, and I worked for 10 million owner-managed businesses, 30 million owner-managed businesses, 100 million owner-managed businesses, and then eventually I went into the corporate world. And what I saw was each time I took that step from 10 to 30 to 100 to 1.3 billion, was the chaos got 100 times worse at every level. And I'm sitting there thinking, what is going on? I just saw everybody lying and cheating and being deceitful. And not once was it because they were bad people. It was just the environment in which they were forced to operate. So we're back to what you said a little while ago about numbers. Everyone, when you get to those sort of levels of businesses, it's all about chasing numbers. And when you're chasing numbers, just give up and go home, because you've just got it all completely wrong. And then, of course, you look at the corporates. The corporates are reporting, what they call quicks, like 3-month forecast, 6-month forecast, 12-month forecast budgets. They've got, they're a listed business. They've got shareholders to nourish. And not hitting a forecast is not an option. And if you declared that you didn't hit a forecast, then that's it. Your ass was grass. You were gone. And of course, people have got mortgages to pay and families to feed, etc., etc. So that forces people to lie. And the best way to lie, and this is why Carillion failed, because what was happening was all the interdepartmental directors, MDs, CEOs within the various siloed businesses within these corporates, when they didn't hit their number, they had to hit 15 million for the month, for example, and they'd only hit 9.5, they would declare 5.5 million of accruals. Work in progress that didn't exist. But it nourished the fact of the business, we've hit 15 million. And it's not until it catches up with you to realise that there's 350 million quid that we're reporting that don't even exist, that we're never going to get. And then bang, suddenly you have to write it off. It gets caught by your auditors at some point, or you get caught by running out of cash. And in Carillion's case, they run out of cash. And you sit and you think, that's because you're chasing numbers. And so for me, because I was so disruptive during my journey in these businesses, although I was learning, I just kept saying, why are we doing this? And at one point, my MD at the business I was working at said to me, Jeff, we're 3.5 million short of budget. can you find any work in progress? I said, well, if I had any work in progress, I've already told you. Can you just not say there's another 3 million? No, I can't. Well, that's not very helpful. And I said, I don't care. I'm not going to lie about anything. There's no 3 million. If you wanted to say there's 3 million, put it on your head. But there's no, if anyone asks me, I'm going to say, no, there isn't. So that was the fourth situation where someone said, can I write you a check out to leave, Jeff? So I said, yes, of course you can. But I realised I was never going to turn the oil tanker. It was never going to happen. And after 8 years, I realised that I now understand what the problem is. And the only way I'm going to solve it is to solve it embryonically. I've got to start a business and try not to take over the world, because that was never the intention, but I need to start a business that behaves radically different to every other business in the industry to demonstrate, one, you can have a massively successful business, a happy workforce, and make more margin than you've ever made without chasing a number. And it all started off by being radical by saying, in our business, no one will ever get fired for not hitting their number, because it's not about numbers. You do the right thing, you deliver the service, you ensure your business is structured well, the numbers will follow. Stop chasing the number. And that was the whole methodology behind starting Cloud, and breaking every single rule in the book. And that was the motivation to do something materially different. And you know, there's loads and loads of rules we broke, but I'll just pick on one, which was really interesting, where I'd spent my first part of my career, my first business, and with every business I worked for, where 50% of the time you're chasing money, which is not what you loved, nor did you enjoy it. And at the end of the day, you're stagnating the growth of your business because 50% of the time you're not growing it. So I swore that when I start another business, I would never chase money. So how do I not chase money? Easy. I don't give people credit. If I don't give people credit, I ain't got to chase money. And of course, my business partner at the time and my colleagues said, you're mad, Jeff. No one's going to tolerate that. You know, you just don't get it. And I said, no, you don't get it. I'm not chasing money. No, I'm not going to not chase money. It's not giving credit. So they said, how are you going to do that then? I said, I want to create a solution that a client wants so badly they'll agree to anything. But the solution's got to be radically different and radically beneficial to them. So we did. I built the technology, built the methodology, built the culture, and said, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and this is the benefit you're going to get as a result that you've never seen before in your life, and we're going to guarantee the outcome. And if we don't achieve it, we give you all your money back. It's a no-brainer, zero risk to any client. But I'm only going to give you 24 hours credit. You've got to pay me the day after I raise the invoice. And then the client would say, we can't do that. We only pay 30 days, 60 days. And we say, in that case, we can't help you. Come back when you think you can. Without any exception, every client that we wanted to win, that they wanted to enjoy the outcome, paid us within 24 hours. And therefore, I never chased money again. And we haven't got, you know, people say, oh, what's your creditor days and your debtor days? Well, we have nothing over 15 days old ever. So it becomes a heavenly thing where you're spending all of your time running and growing the business, which is the bit you love. So yeah, that's one example, one of the rules we changed, where people would have ripped their arm off before they'd accept that it would have worked, and it did work as long as you say that's the rules, take it or leave it.
That must have been a big, bold decision to kind of go down that path, because so many people, if you're met with a big company that goes, we will use you, but it's on our terms. And I can think of a few companies now that we would do work with, but the restrictions might be quite substantial and very different to a lot of other organisations. But because of the potential on the other side, you kind of go, okay, I'll absorb some debt, I'll absorb some risk, and I'll class it as calculated risk and managed. So to take the decision when it is your own business as well, like say, you're not reliant on a salary or someone else bailing you out if it all goes wrong, to actually stand firm with that must have been a big, bold decision. There might have been a few people in your ear saying, Jeff, is this seriously the right way to do it? How did you kind of cope back with the pushback from that?
Well, I just spent time learning and educating. So, yeah, although it sounds a little bit easy and far-fetched on 24-hour credit, it wasn't quite like that. What it was the technology meant that the second somebody turned up on site and left site, we already knew the cost of the job before they'd even raised a charge, an invoice or whatever, because that's how our technology works. And we would make the client aware of that on the day it happens. So the client knows exactly what their exposure is from the day the engineer has done the job, which we call accruals. And they're dynamic accruals, which means they are accurate within 3 or 4%. So the client's got a real good idea about what that cost is and what it's going to be. Now, the supply chain will spend another 20, 30 days before they actually ask for that money. And when the supply chain do ask for that money, that's the point at which we ask the client for the money. But in the meantime, we've prepared the client. So although I'm saying you've got 24 hours from when I give you an invoice to paying me, they've actually been accruing for it for 30 or 40 days. So we were not changing any rules that had a direct impact on them because outside of our methodology, the client wouldn't know the cost until they got the invoice, for which they want 30 days to plan and accrue.
Right.
What we're saying is you're accruing from the moment it's happened. So in reality, we haven't changed anything for you. We've just done it differently. But what we've done is taken away the risk and the exposure.
Yeah, it's a really clever way of thinking about doing that, right? And again, I suppose it's testament to the fact of Cloud FM now being such a recognised brand within the FM world. And as we touched on prior to us having this conversation now, the market in general is so saturated. From a supply chain perspective, there are so many other companies out there that are consistently over-promising, under-delivering, whether it be on a pre-planned basis. We get it all the time, and I see it firsthand when I speak with a potential client, and the outcome is, I've had this PPM in place for 3 years, but in actual fact, the scale build up and everything else that's kind of come with it, and you kind of scratch your head and think, well, were there no photos, where there's no kind of dynamic assessment done on the actual project itself? But so much of that is happening within the industry. And from an FM perspective, there are so many people that I can think of, and these are brands that we also made a conscious effort to kind of say, well, thank you for the opportunity to come out to tender. Thank you for the opportunity to potentially do work with you. But we're not morally aligned. We can't continue to do that type of work because of the lying, the cheating, the hiding, the faking that is rife in certain areas if you decide to go down that route. So the big, bold decisions, I suppose really in your terminology, doing the opposite, right, is trying to lean into to territories unknown. And something I beat very loudly within our business, and I coined this from Seth Godin, the US marketing genius that is, try to be a purple cow in everything you're doing. If you're driving down the highway and you're going past fields and fields and you see plenty of cows, after your 10th, you're going to forget it. How do you become that purple beast out there that you're never going to forget you saw? So we're constantly on that journey. And I know, speaking with you now and listening to everything I've listened to about you, Cloud FM is exactly the same, right? I can imagine from a people perspective, if we kind of leant over into there, you're setting some huge numbers within your people. How do you foster that culture within your business? Because everything I've heard from you has all been about the people, and it's all about the culture. How do you keep that going, and how do you instill that into the management teams and everything else that you're entrusting to run the businesses?
When I started the business, and there was 10, 15, 20 of us, and people around us, clients, suppliers, accountants, would say, Jeff, you've got a great culture here. This is brilliant. How are you going to do it when you've got 50 people? And I say, well, just do the same thing. Well, how are you going to do it when you get 100 people? And for me, the answer is really, really simple. If it's authentic, it doesn't matter if you've got 1 or 10,000 or 50,000. It's the infrastructure. And the infrastructure is, if you imagine a triangle that's like this, and you look at any organisation, you've got the chief exec or the C-suite at the top. We are in charge. And you've got the managers in the middle. We want you to do these things, right? I want these numbers here. I want this done. I want this done. I want this done. The managers then say to the frontline staff, right, you've got to do this. You've got to be here at 8 o'clock. You've got to do so-and-so. You've got to make sure you hit these numbers. You've got to answer those amount of phone calls. It's all dictatorial, everything. Because from the top down, we know best. Then what happens is the front line are frightened to fart, they're frightened to cough, they're frightened to anything. And the second you deviate from anything normal, the frontline staff are looking back up again saying, can we do this? Because this is a problem. And the manager's going, I better check. So they didn't go back up to C-suite, can I do this? And you've got this internalised circle going on. That's just a waste of life. So all I did to articulate what I wanted was I turned the triangle upside down. And the C-suite are at the bottom, and the managers are in the middle, and the frontline staff are at the top. And the C-suite's job is to serve the managers. The managers are our client. I've got to do everything they need to enable them to do their job. The managers do exactly the same for the frontline staff. My job is to do everything I can for frontline staff. And one of the examples I had was when I was at one of the businesses that I worked at, and I went to them and said, look, my laptop's really slow. I'm really struggling to do some stuff. They went, but you've only had that 9 months. I'm not getting you another laptop, for God's sake. So I said, okay. So I'll carry on being slow then. That's a classic example of top-down authoritarianism, right? Whereas if someone in our business said, my laptop's slow, and they said, well, I only got that for you 3 weeks ago. They wouldn't say I only got it for 3 weeks ago. They'd say, we'll get you another laptop. My job is to take away all the barriers preventing you from doing your job really, really well. And provided you create that culture and you hold that accountability, you will maintain that culture from 1 to 50,000 people. As long as you realize that people join a business, they leave a boss. So your job as a C-suite, as an owner, as a set of stakeholders that are at the top of the tree driving the growth of the business, your attention, all of your attention has to be on those managers. Because if those managers don't behave in a way that drives your culture, you'll have attrition, you'll have internal politics going on, you'll have discomfort, you'll have a bad culture. So all we do is we focus on the managers to make sure the managers behave as well, if not better than the C-suite. Your job is to serve people. Your job is not to tell them and be the smartest person in the room. Your job is to serve. It's that simple.
Clearly that ethos, that mentality is what is separating Cloud FM to a large proportion of the competition that's out there at the moment. Putting the people part to one section for the moment, where else, if you were looking theoretically back now over Cloud FM's journey, would you say this has been our defining moments, this is what brought us the levels of success that we've got up until now? How would you say you differentiate compared to the countless names that are out there within the FM industry?
I think it all goes right back to the very beginning, where I'm not going to say for 1 second that I knew what was going to happen. I knew what I wanted to try and achieve, but I to the extent I was going to succeed, I had no idea. You don't until you try new things, right? And I was going to try this new stuff, and I've lived by this thing so much. Everyone hears it, it's cliche, I know, but I so believe it. Do the same thing, you get the same result. Right, and I watched the world go round doing the same thing and expecting a different result, and they're all deluded. This is the definition of insanity. So if you and I have this thing that says don't twiddle knobs, because that doesn't do anything. You've got to put a grenade in the middle and blow it up. Right, you've got to radically think differently about anything you do if you want a materially different result. So I therefore went and broke all the rules, of which I've explained one of them over credit. But if you look back to the start of everything, what I knew I needed to achieve was to let people be their best selves. And I'm going to tell you another little story, which I love to tell. I had a manager hired a guy once, and he was a commercial finance person, and he said, and I went up to him, I said, I'll make the names, I can't remember the names, but how's John getting on? Well, I've got on a bit of a short lead at the moment. I said, how long has he been here? He said, 3 months. So I said, okay, what do you mean short lead? What does that mean? Well, I'm not really quite sure about his spreadsheet work. I'm just checking everything he does. So I said, okay. So I said, can I tell you a little story about John? And he said, well, you know John? I said, yeah. So I said, 3 weeks ago, I said, John's wife went to see her mother, and she lives the other side of Croydon. And she was on the M25. She's got 2 young kids. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. She's coming home. It's pissing the rain. The car broke down on the hard shoulder. And there's lorries going past or whatever. So she's phoned him up and said, John, I broke down on the M25. It's, And I said, and he went out at 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, rescued his wife and the kids, got them back home again, organised the collection of the vehicle, got the vehicle back home. I said, 3 days later, his cold water tank in the loft burst. Completely drowned their house. New carpets, furniture, the lot gone. I said, he got them out of that house into a hotel, organised the insurance, arranged for the loss adjuster to come around, sort all the house out. So he did all that in 2.5 weeks. I said, before that, he'd organised his mortgage over 25 years to get him, his family into his house. He had to raise up the deposit. All this stuff. He said, really? How'd you know that? I said, look, it's all a lie. I just made it up. But we all know that's what's happening in people's lives. Why are you watching him on a spreadsheet? What is the matter with you? Let him do his job. And you trust until someone lets you down. Otherwise, you are just, every time you employ somebody, your workload goes up. It's ridiculous. Let it go. Give people a chance to fail because that's how you and they learn. Let it go. And that's a story that I've used so many times. And when I told that story for the first time, I spoke to him about John. About 6 months later, he got promoted 3 times in 6 months. And yet he was on a short lead.
That's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy to think so many people genuinely do exactly that within the business world. As I say, I've seen it countless times myself. So many organisations are so concentrated or dialed into EBITDA, profit, revenue results, death by PowerPoint and spreadsheets galore, right? And you lose sight so much of the people and the journey along the way. And part of the thing that I've absolutely loved about the business and the culture that I'm blessed to be within today is it's all about the people, and everything that you do within business, I'm certainly finding on my own career path and journey, and I have no doubt many people listening to this will also resonate. It's all about the people. Everything stems from the people and giving them, once again, a safe, happy working environment where they feel that they are valued, they're part of a tribe, and it's going to help them prosper within their own
Every
benefits.
human being, bar none, want and need 3 things in life.
Yeah.
They need autonomy, they need mastery, and they need purpose. And autonomy is being trusted to do what they need to do, being trusted for them to try new things and create and be creative. If you stop people being creative, if you stop people trying new things, which basically means if you fail, we got a problem. What you've just done is guaranteed they will not try new things. When you can treat failure as a learning moment and let people try new things, then they will become creative. So that's autonomy. Mastery is I play golf. I don't go and play golf this Saturday hoping I played worse than I did last Saturday. I'm going to play better. I'm going to intend, I might still play worse than last week, but my intention is to get better. You don't sit and play the guitar weekends because you love guitar to get worse at playing guitar. Every human being desires to improve in what they're doing. The wife who's cooking a meal wants to cook a better meal than last week. It's all just basic life. And purpose is you need to want to do something big in yourself. Why do you think there are so many volunteers for charity, whether it be for homeless, going to Africa and building mud huts? And why do you think people do this? Because it's something bigger than themselves. When you can nourish those 3 things in your family as well as in business, then you've got a powerhouse. But what you can't do is be unauthentic. You can't say, I'm going to give you autonomy, but by the way, you can't go to the toilet until I say so. Until you are truly empowering people. And for me, as much as I'd practiced this and was getting hopefully better and stronger at it, what really helped was the explosion of COVID. COVID accelerated this behaviour 1,000-fold. And we will not go back to pre-COVID yet. I feel sorry for all those leaders and businesses that are trying to go back to the old ways of operation, and that's back to command and control. And it's, you will be in the office, you will do this, you will do that. Those businesses are going to stagnate and die, and they're certainly going to slow down beyond the competition. So unless and until you can truly empower your people, they will never let you down. The amount of times people say to me, aren't you worried about people taking the mickey? Aren't you worried about people taking advantage? I just say to them, I've never seen anyone take advantage. As long as you are authentic, you need to do 2 things. Give them true freedom, but give them clarity. If they don't have clarity, then you have anarchy, right? You've got to give them clarity. You've got to agree to clarity. These are the outcomes we want by these times. If they are clear on that and they've got the help and support they need on that journey, they will never let you down.
Such an insightful way to be thinking about things. Because as I say, there's so many businesses out there that genuinely will run it the other way. And they will do the typical, which will be run from the top down, control and command the situation. And it's that clarity piece, isn't it? If you haven't got clarity, if people don't necessarily know what's expected of them, it's almost like saying hit a target with a blindfold on. You're never going to get the result that you need out of someone.
I guess some of the biggest lessons we learn is where we're curious. And, when you look across the businesses in the world, where it be Nike, Apple, Microsoft, all these huge businesses, and they all talk about people and growth and culture and stuff. And you measure culture by engagement. How engaged are your staff in your organisation? And I love to ask this question. Who do you think, of all the global organisations that you can think of, who do you think you would expect to have the highest engagement?
Highest engagement? I'd probably go Apple, maybe.
That's a good shout, yeah.
Yeah, Apple, something like that. I suppose you've got the technological part of it, where people within the business could probably engage quite quickly, smoothly with their operations teams and everyone else within the business, I imagine. So my gut feeling would be something like that.
And that's, like I said, it's not a bad shout. Apple are 78% engaged.
Right.
Nike are 83% engaged. Amazon, surprisingly, are 80% engaged, even though you hear all the bad stories.
Yeah.
But the highest engaged business on the planet is WD-40.
WD-40?
96% engaged. And they make oil in a can.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
And the reason is because Gary Ridge, who's been the chief exec for 25 years, who only retired 2 years ago, focused properly, thoroughly, and entirely on the tribe, on the culture. And everybody knew that they all went to work to love and to care for each other every day. That was their purpose. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And they have been the guru of engagement for 20 years. They've written loads of books about it. And I'm lucky enough to know Gary. He's become a good friend of mine. He's on my podcast. And he's an Australian guy. But oh my God, does he know what he's talking about? And of course, the compound growth that WD-40 enjoyed as a result of that engagement smashes anybody else on the planet out of the water. Yeah. That's the power of engagement. But businesses still think it's about command and control. And when I say command and control is dead, people say, yeah, but Jeff, there's loads of businesses out there, command and control, are very successful. I go, yes, you're right. But they'd have been more successful if they wasn't.
Yeah. And I think, kind of looking at it from a supplier's perspective, when we think about our growth journeys as a business now, when we touch again on this prior to us hitting the record button, for us, the only way you get to hit the numbers that we're striving for and our goals internally over the next 3-4 years is to really change the landscape within our sector, within the plumbing and the drainage sector. To be able to do that, you need top-tier talent. You're only going to get top-tier talent if you become a purple cow, and you're only going to get the numbers you need if the service you're delivering is purple cow territory. If people within the business are happy and all aligned with the mission of the business to provide the best service that the industry can provide. And without that, you're going to be on a slippery slope very quickly, and you're going to consistently be battling with the norm of other competitors that are out there in the market that are all trying to do the same thing.
All you've got to do is the people you employ, you bring into your organisation, you've got to ask them one question: do you believe what we believe? And that's the $1 million question, right? And that's only after they understand what it is you believe and what your purpose is and what you're trying to achieve. The second most important, there's 3 things that are important for people beyond the autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Every person in your organisation, from an apprentice up to a board director, needs to understand what they are doing, how that is contributing to the outcome of the business. If they don't know how they're contributing, if they say, well, I answer the phone, but I don't know what good it does, then you've got a disengaged person. You need to create an environment, and it's not easy, but you have to do it. How do you ensure that the OKRs or whatever your structure is for your business, where everybody knows exactly how they're contributing to the outcome you seek? When you can do that, then people are engaged. The second thing that companies get wrong is every single human being you employ has to understand their potential career path. And where companies go wrong, and I'm going to give you another story, a woman that came to work for us 5-6 years ago came in as our finance controller. And she was brilliant, and she came from a big business in the similar industry. And I sat down with her and I said, what's your aspiration? She said, I want to be a finance director. So I said, okay, that's not unusual, I guess. Her whole family's been in accountancy and stuff, and she was ambitious. So I spoke to her 6 months later. I said, so back to this finance director. She goes, well, I'm not going to get a finance director here. You've got a young finance director who's only been in post 2 years. He's pumped. He's good. I'm never going to get that chance. I went, you're missing the point. My job is not to only invest in you as a finance director on the basis that I've got a role. My job is to make you a finance director anywhere, whether you go there, or anywhere. That's my role. That's the business's role for all of its people. I need to understand your aspirations, and I've got to work, my back off with you and our colleagues to give you the opportunity to become what you want to become. It's not constrained by whether there's a role here or not. Because if at the point we thought you was ready for finance director and we haven't got a role, I'm going to help you find that finance director role somewhere else. That's our job. And when people have got clarity on their career path and understand there are no constraints other than themselves, they become giants. Anyway, 4 years later, she's our group FD.
Well, what a story. Yeah, I bet, so many businesses could take away from that way of thinking. So many people kind of go, like you said, the conventional way would be, there's not a role here. There's not going to be a role here. Let's just put that in the box for the moment.
Yeah,
exactly.
Box,
you sit over in that side of the room. And mine have that courage to kind of go, let's get you ready to that role. Fingers crossed, we treat you in the right way. Therefore, you will stay with us. And that skill set, that asset, that investment will remain within the business. But so many people won't think like that. They will go the other way, which is a shame. And I think that's what, genuinely in this country, I find we kill off a lot of the talent simply because we're so stuck with the old ways of thinking in most businesses. It is, as we touched on earlier, that control, command the whole way through.
It is. And I think, the other story I've got, and these are stuff that we're all very proud of, that's not just me, it's been my colleagues as well. But, we've got people in our business that have been brilliant, been loyal servants, but they've gone as far as they can go. They won't progress any further. But then they come up with the idea, say, I think we'd like to start a business. I think I'd like to start my own business. I'd like to start my own plumbing business, right? We say, okay, let's have a chat about that, blah, blah. Anyway, 4 businesses now, people within our organisation have said they want to start a business. We have capitalised them. We have funded them. We have given them guaranteed work. We've acted as guarantor on all their creditors so they could get vans and stuff like that. We've taken no ownership in the business. There's no, it's just, we are here to help you, but you're helping us because you become a great supplier with our values and our culture. And we sit back proud thinking those businesses that we started, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago are now 15, 20 million pound businesses.
And they now act as suppliers back to
They are suppliers to us, but then also supply, but we were their guaranteed revenue as a new business. So we took away all the risk anyone would normally have starting a business. We also gave them preferential payment terms. We sustained their cash flow to get them started because they had the values, they had the culture, they had the principles. And then now they've grown much, much bigger than us, not us as a business, but they've grown much, much bigger because they're now working for other companies with great values. And they're the things I'm talking about when we put our money where our mouth is by saying it's about serving the people.
Wow. That's really, again, I keep pinning this word back to you, but innovation. It's everything you've put your name, your brand towards. You're leaning into an innovation period where so many people, again, will just look at that and go, that's crazy. That's crazy. I'm training people up so they're going to leave me or they're going to serve other people, which will be my competitors. But that innovation piece means that you've built loyalty, trust. You've instilled that confidence into people, which does everyone better.
And when you treat people well, they'll treat you well. It's basic human nature. And it's another thing I love to say all the time. No one cares what you say. They only care what you do. It's about how you make someone feel. No one will remember what you said. No one will remember what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that statement. It's one of the staples within my vocabulary. Such a true statement. Coming close to the end now, Jeff, if we're forward thinking now, the next 5 years for Cloud FM and for the journey of yourself as well, what does that start to look like? What do you want to aim to accomplish moving forward now?
We started this business with a very clear purpose, which was to restore trust in a failing industry by changing the rules. And we did that in the first 5 years by way of the fact that the language being used when we started Cloud was, it's about reverse engineering. It's about value engineering. It's about, we've got the biggest help desk in the world. It's about, we've got the biggest help desk in Europe. And we used to say, it's about transparency. It's about visibility. It's about culture. It's about data insight. It's about having the smallest help desk in the world. It's about efficiency. Within 5 years, the entire industry, when they were going out to tender meetings, started changing all the language. They started saying it's about transparency, it's about visibility. Now, the fact that no one could really deliver that was neither here nor there. They were using the same language. So we therefore had to elevate what we were doing. And we've elevated to, we're going to help sustain the planet. So it's a slightly higher purpose.
Yeah.
And to do that wasn't just about FM and delivering services. It was about what else can we do that's going to have a material impact on the sustainability of a planet. So we started investing in a product back in 2018 that I've invested millions into now for the last 5 years. That's going to change the way people behave towards consuming energy, towards maintenance, predictive maintenance, and various other bits and pieces. And it's a product that's now patented globally as we now hit the market, and we're now getting interest all over the globe. But that's not about the benefit to our business and how we're going to grow as a result. What it is about that we can have a materially positive impact on the sustainability of the planet, not because of some fantastic product that we're going to declare is better than anybody else's product. It's about what we focus on is how do we change people's behavior. And I say this all the time. You can put 1,000 scientists, the best scientists and professors in the world, into a room, and they'll tell you how to save the planet. And they'll be right, but nothing will change. If you want to save the planet, only the population can save the planet. So how do you get the population to change their behavior to save the planet? And the only way you do that is you give them the tools that gamifies and makes them feel endorphined into doing it. And if you can imagine that you've got an app in your hand that buzzes at the end of this podcast that says, don't forget to turn all your lights off because you've left them off. You've left them all on after the last 5 podcasts, and it's cost you 17 quid. If you turn them off, you'll save 17 quid. And if you turn them off after every podcast, you'll save 2,860 quid. So you go, shit, that's a good idea. So I'm now going to switch the lights off. And then it buzzes you immediately, said, well done. Well done, John. You've turned the lights off. Well done. I've just shared that with all of your network and all your portfolio. You're now the 3rd highest performing energy consumption podcast studio in the UK. What you're now doing is people are getting instant gratification for the action they're taking. Whereas at the moment, some manager for a Pizza Express has got to wait until the end of the year to be told off by his estates manager that he spent shitloads more energy than he was supposed to. But he can't do nothing about it. It's gone. Whereas now he can influence what's going to happen rather than what has happened. And what we've proved, because we've been doing this now for 6 years, is it's amazing the things that the actions that people will take when they get the right information. There's not fancy graphs that no one cares about. They just want the insight in the action, and they want to know the instant gratification of the action they've just taken. It's game changing, and yeah, it's going to change the world. So we've now elevated our business. That's what's next. The next level is what can we do more at a higher pace, a higher speed, and engage the entire population rather than just a population of FM managers in the hospitality industry.
It's going to be a groundbreaking idea, concept. When that comes to market, it will literally tick so many boxes. The analogy you gave me earlier on, whether it be a light bulb that goes out and you're made aware of that light bulb going out, that insight is going to be so powerful and so influential across the board for that to come through. And you say that's coming up imminent?
Well, it's already installed in Singapore, in India, in Chicago, in the Netherlands, obviously all over the UK. So we've got, all we're doing is building the case study because the tidal wave's coming. We're just saying let's just get everybody completely understandable about how they can apply this rather than just selling it for the sake of selling it. So, and at the moment we're talking to a dozen global businesses that just want to take total exclusivity for this solution. And as I said, it's got a worldwide patent on it, so no one's going to be able to get anywhere near it. But it's something that we want to use to engage the world. So this is not something we're trying to keep exclusive. We want everybody to have access to it. But we're on a journey, I think the same as Apple was. If you remember when Apple first launched, they went exclusively with O2 for a period of time to control the explosion. And then after a period of time, it then became available to the wider world. We're on a similar trajectory, and it's very, very exciting.
It is very exciting times ahead. If we're going to capsulate now, right? If I asked you a question, which is if you could go back, I love asking this question, to the 16-year-old version of yourself, right? Have that sit-down conversation with you and give them advice.
Mhm.
What would that look like? What would that feel like?
Stop pretending you know it all. You know nothing. Stop being so cocky and arrogant. It makes you unapproachable and unlikable. Be humble. Be curious. The most powerful word in the world is curiosity. When you can truly be curious, you learn at lightning pace. Do not try and tell people stuff that you think you're better than them, because you never are. And be the last person to speak in a room. Absorb the information.
Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. I really have enjoyed this conversation. It's incredibly insightful to hear you speak. The ideas and the way that you approach business, the way that you approach the industry as a whole, is a testament to really what we should all be aspiring towards, putting people first and foremost, being innovative and effectively doing the opposite. So thank you so much for coming on, taking the time today.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time as well.
Thank you.